Hockey fans, welcome to NYI FYI with Sean Croft and Chris Hessel.
Welcome to FYI Live, NYIFYI.com, live on YouTube. Chris Hessel on Sunday, February 23rd. Welcome to the funeral of the New York Islanders.
Oh my goodness.
2013-2014 season. It's done. It's over.
I don't even. I mean, what? There are no words. No words. Oh my goodness.
I do. Ouch.
Oh man. Buster Cluck, right?
Yeah, huh?
Oh my goodness gracious. Are we allowed to say that? I think we're allowed to say that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, wow.
I mean, it
Talk
truly
about
is.
having, it's like stick the knife in and twist it.
It's a
Bad enough that
disaster.
you and I feel that NHL players shouldn't be at the Olympics. You get the ultimate slap in the face.
Yep.
Based on that. It's like the old Beatles song, Things are getting better all the time. And we get forced that down our throats, but then in the meanwhile you have John Lennon singing the background. But they're sometimes getting worse.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It seems like nothing ever gets better. It always is getting worse.
It's constantly worse.
Here we are. I guess you want to look for a silver lining or good news is it's not correct. We're gonna freak out on Twitter and stuff. I was interacting with some of you guys, on Twitter over the day that it happened, and a lot of people freaking out that it was going to be career threatening and this and that and the other thing. This is recoverable. I mean, when somebody tells me multiple ligament damage, which was what was first being said, that to me that's 6 months. So it sounds like he'll be ready to go in the summer at some point. He'll be ready for training camp. It was nice to see him, this morning, standing there in a shirt and tie getting his medal. At least he didn't look like he was holding on to any kind of crutches there, but he's going to come back now, and he'll get his surgery when he comes back to New York. But it's tough. I mean, because this team was already spiraling downward in the standings this year. So it's kind of funny to describe a mood on something that was already lost, but at least you figure, well, you get to, this guy's third in the league in scoring, there'll be something good to come out of this season, that as bad as they be, he's carried the load of the team, and this and that and the other things. So you kind of, you kind of look at that and you go, well, we don't have that anymore. We don't have the ability to watch our star player for the rest of the year, and it was like, you got to be kidding me. And when Bob McKenzie came out and said that the initial word from Sochi was not good, that's when you felt like your heart was like, oh, you've got to give me a break. And you look at this and you go, I don't care if it was an elimination game, okay? The game was against Latvia. Canada versus Latvia is about as much of an exhibition game as you can get. Now,
Yeah.
Latvia played great, but that's like 11 times out of 10 Canada's going to win that.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never going to, so, it's frustrating in the sense that it was, to me, about as close as an exhibition game as you could get.
There was yes, you're right. Times out of 10 they're going to win, but Latvia played well, so
They
kept
did.
them in the, they kept themselves in the game.
They played very well in this whole tournament, actually.
I got to be honest with you. I've always believed, and I think we've talked about it on this show in the past, because we've been through, this is 2 Olympics now that we've been through. And I've shared the opinion, and you share the same opinion, that NHL players should not be in the Olympics, because I believe that you should not be a professional athlete in the Olympics.
Yeah.
The Olympics really are amateurs, the best amateurs in the world.
Yes.
And I don't believe that professional athletes who get paid, handsomely to play a game should be involved in playing for the
Right.
Olympics. Now, there's two sides to that coin. Yes, you want the best athletes in the world. I get that. And there also is a case to be made for if you are the best at what you do in a specific event, then you have earned the right to represent your country.
Right.
I get that. But Usain Bolt runs for a living. He has sponsorships. That's all he's ever going to have.
Yes.
He's not going to get paid the millions upon millions upon millions of dollars
Right.
that these professional athletes do. He'll get them in endorsements,
Right.
but Usain Bolt is never going to sign a $50 million contract.
No, and neither is Apollo Antonono or Michael Phelps, and these guys, you see them everywhere. They're in car commercials, they're in Subway commercials, they're in this. I mean,
That's
they're
where they
hauling
get
in
their money. And eventually that's going to give out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the thing for me is...
In 20 years, nobody's going to care about Apollo Antonono.
and that's the sad thing, because, some of these guys are the most phenomenal athletes you'll ever see.
Right.
But to me, and I know that it's, it's funny because it is a little hypocritical in a way. We were complaining about the construct of Team USA, and we'll get to that. But, here we are saying, they left the best, what we felt were the best players at home. But you have to understand, this is, the thinking is now you have NHL players participating in as much to the chagrin of us. And you obviously, all right, well, if you're going to do that, then you might as well bring your best players. When I look at it, and it's funny because, like, you're talking about people not caring in the Olympics and stuff like that. I was talking to someone about this, and I was talking about how upset I was that Tavares was hurt, that now, because of this stupid Olympics, I can't watch the one good thing that was left on this team for this year perform in front of my eyes. Like, and we'll get to his comments, but like Snow said, you pay money to see this guy, and, now you can't. And the response that I got, because I said the NHL players should not be in the Olympics, this only confirms it. This, Zetterberg, Zuccarello, I mean, all these guys getting hurt for significant time for their teams. And, and to me, I said that NHL players shouldn't be in the Olympics, and the response was, well, then but then your team may not have a shot at winning because then you don't have the best players and this and that. Now, full disclosure, this person is from Europe, and it made me realize, well, that goes back to the Europeans care about sports like this very much. They care about, the Olympics. They don't have professional football. They don't have much professional basketball over there. It's growing there, but, they don't have, but even in professional basketball, when these NBA players go and sign overseas, it's China or it's Spain. I mean, it's not, there's not much in the European leagues. So it's a little different. We pay athletes to play basketball, to play football, to play hockey, to play baseball, millions upon millions of dollars. And people think that this is, it's not. This is a problem that's going on in other sports too, because there's the Team USA thing in basketball with Dwayne Wade, and should he go, should he not go, how are his knees, and this and that. He's banged up, and now he hasn't been the same. But how about the World Baseball Classic? I mean, Yankee fans, you and I are Yankee
Mark
fans.
Teixeira.
We had to sit and watch Lyle Overbay play first base for us, attempt to play first base for us all of last year, only because of the World Baseball Classic. So to me, I love hockey. I watch college games. I watch the World Juniors. I'm going to care about the Olympic hockey when it comes around if they use in 2018 if they use amateur players. I think that's fantastic because at the same time you're going to see the guys that are going to be getting drafted soon. You're going to see the guys, some that are drafted. You're going to see people who care about hockey watch the World Juniors, and there's a lot of people listen to this show, a lot of people that you come in contact with that are fans, maybe because we always seem to be picking in the top 5, care about the World Juniors and watch the World Juniors and watch college, to see how a couple of years ago it was, well, let's watch Notre Dame's on, let's go watch how Anders Lee is playing. And you always hear the term, well, best player not in the NHL, best player this, best player that, best college player, and things like that. There are still phenomenal talents that are going to be performing in these. I think the time comes where, and by the way, speaking to some people at work, and of course it's biased because I work on Long Island, so by a lot of people may, if they had to choose a team, would care about the Islanders, but the Islanders have been so bad for so long that this could be a factor in their answer. But a lot of people who have gone hockey crazy, if you will, during these Olympics, I asked them, so is this going to make you more likely to watch the NHL come the 28th or whatever the NHL comes back? And the answer every time, almost every time, except for one which was, I don't know, maybe I'll check it out and this and that, was a no. I don't see the NHL. I'd be very curious what the ratings are, and we'll have to look into that. But in my little micro world there of a poll that I did, it doesn't look like that the NHL gets a big bump from this, at least not from middle-aged people that work at a Long Island company. It's like, not really.
So that's the question: is what good does this do?
Correct. That's what I was getting at. Is it really growing the game? It's putting guys on an international stage, absolutely, and it's getting their names out there. But we'll have to see what the ratings do. I'm sure there'll be articles about what happens to NHL ratings after the Olympic break, before the Olympic break. But it really kills a lot of momentum, and it creates some wacky things. I keep thinking back in 2006 when we had a Carolina versus Edmonton finals, because the teams that were the better teams were sending half their teams to play in these Olympic games, and just injuries and got worn out. But this is the worst I remember it being.
Yeah. For
injuries. Zetterberg's out for the year, Tavares is out for the year, Zuccarello's out a month, and Zuccarello was playing on Norway. Come on. They did all that so he could go play on Norway, which never even stood a chance, and now he's got a broken hand. The Rangers' leading scorer. Paul Martin's out for a month, and he's been having a couple of nice rebound years for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they're battling Boston for first overall. This is not a good situation.
No, this is a disaster league-wide. And we talked before we came on, and I wanted to touch upon it. When I read Garth Snow's comments that have absolutely no validity, zero, and I'll tell you why. Number one, Garth Snow played in the Olympics. Okay? So you can't have afforded yourself the opportunity to go and represent your country and then complain when somebody else got their chance because they got hurt.
Right.
And the IOC, they should reimburse our season ticket holders. Oh, stop it.
That was a little goofy.
You're coming off like
never gonna happen.
You sound like a fool and like a baby. And here's the other thing. You didn't complain when Zuccarello got hurt. You didn't complain about Paul Martin. You didn't complain about Henrik Zetterberg.
Yeah.
It wasn't until it affected John Tavares that you had something to say about it. It could have been anybody in those Olympics as long as it wasn't Vanek, because then he has no trade value. Grabner, because then he has no trade value, because I'm sure that he's on the block. And by the way, he played pretty well.
Yes.
Look at what happens once he gets ice time away from Flounder.
Yeah.
And as long as it wasn't John Tavares, but you know what? It was John Tavares.
It was John Tavares. You know what the funny thing is about Snow's comments, and I'm just going to be honest with you, I agree with him saying that NHL players shouldn't be. And
that's the only thing I agree with him with, because I share that opinion.
I understand him going off about it because I do think that it's ridiculous. But at the same time, it's a right it's in the Constitution. They're allowed to do this. It's in the new CBA rather. They were allowed to perform for their country in the Olympics. It was part of the agreement. So when it's not like Team Canada, chose John Tavares and said you must report and play for your country. The Islanders held back Lubomir Vishnevsky. Now that of course had some controversy because Sikora didn't talk to Snow, and it became a mess because the Islanders didn't clear Vishnevsky, and it was like, well, he's cleared to play for his team, but he's not cleared to play for his country. What is that? This and that. Snow's trying to hurt Slovakia. This other thing.
Because that's Snow's big concern is Slovakia.
Right, but
But he did clear Tavares.
But he did clear Tavares. Tavares wasn't coming off of a major injury at the time, and it's a catch-22. Do you piss off your star player to the point where he says, you can't get me a winger, you can't change a coach, you can't bring players in here who can win, and now you won't let me play for my country? Screw this, I want out. So you're trying to keep the peace there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is the risk, and as somebody said, it's the same risk as a player. I think it was Brendan Witt who said it's the same. The injuries are terrible, but it's the same risk as a player turning a corner and getting hit by a truck. And I think Bob McKenzie said, and I think you would know something about that, to Brendan Witt, as we remember. But you think about it, and it is the same thing. Players get hurt in car accidents. Lubomir Vishnevsky got into this guy seems to be pretty reckless. Got into a pretty bad car accident in the off season, and you just never know what happens. So there's always that risk, and you think about people doing stupid things, Aaron Boone hurting himself in a pickup basketball game, or Jeff Kent breaking his leg in a motorcycle accident and things. Players always do stupid things. But
let's not even talk about Ben Roethlisberger in the offseason.
Let's not go there.
That guy needs an anklet in the offseason.
Or Ray Rice
Ugh.
at this point.
Boy.
But when you look at it, you go, okay, it's kind of the same thing. You're playing games that don't count towards your multi-million-dollar salary. It's a tough call on some of those guys. I mean, there's always the concussion concern with Crosby, but there was no way Pittsburgh was going to say to Crosby, "You're not going to play for Team Canada." Just like there was no way that the Islanders were going to tell John Tavares that he couldn't play. John Tavares wanted to do this. The Islanders could have held him back. So I do feel, I don't know what goes on behind the closed doors there. What Snow is saying to Tavares, like you say what happens next year. Next time you ask me if we can still do this, I'm telling you no. I don't know what goes on there, but if NHL players are allowed to participate, I'm very curious to see how many Islanders will be allowed to go in the future. I will be
probably
very
none.
I would be very curious.
Probably
to see what
just
happens.
no, maybe not even Tavares.
I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm assuming Snow is still the GM because it looks like that's going to be the status
It doesn't
quo.
go anywhere. Well, look, I mean, you said it yourself. You got to keep the peace. I feel like if the IOC is going to allow NHL players to play in the Olympics, you kind of have to let this guy go. I mean, yeah, I'm the one saying you signed off on it, you didn't have to, which is true, and that's how he has to look at it. Technically speaking, he could have said no, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily should in that case, because like you said, you've got to keep the peace.
Yeah, it's going to look bad, too. If all the best players are going and you're keeping, the third leading scorer in the NHL home just because of a risk of injury, everybody's going to say, oh, there goes the Islanders again. And that's not good because players see that. If the players have the right to go over there, it's something they want to do, you got to appease them. And if they see the Islanders holding back all their players who are Olympic eligible and chosen for Olympic teams, players are going to say, well, that's going to factor. Why would I sign a long-term contract with the Islanders when I want to play for my country in 2018?
Exactly. Now, I think that...
And it sounds stupid, but it matters.
The NHL as a whole needs to go to the IOC and say, look, we are not comfortable allowing our players to go. Is that, and see if there's any chance that there is going to be a rule change or plead their case for... They could even plead their case for a rule change, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is it can't just be one guy. And you know what? If it is one guy, it will be Garth Snow. Because the Islanders just seem to be on the wrong side of bad publicity constantly anyway. But I think that it needs to be a league-wide thing because now you have 4 teams affected by this.
Honestly, there's a lot of GMs that I think feel the way Snow did. I mean, Kenny Holland right now has got to be pulling his hair out because, I mean, forget about, Weiss is hurt and Franzen's out and Zetterberg's been in and out with back problems and he's having a really good year and now they don't have him for pretty much the rest of the year. They've had some key injuries to guys and, it's frustrating for a team like Detroit that's on the bubble. I mean, even worse, than the Islanders. Of course, the reason that the Tavares thing is getting so much publicity is scoring points, putting up points, whatever, and and that's the frustrating thing for me about it. Now, there is another wrinkle in this, not to take a step away from this, but now you wonder what happens to Thomas Vanek's trade value. He had the benefit of playing well with Tavares, and they were all feeding off each other and putting up points and this and that and the other thing. Now it's a question of who the heck is he going to play with when he comes back, because Franz Nielsen's out with his broken hand. So they're probably going to call up Strome, and does he immediately get thrust to first-line center? Do they move Brock Nelson? So is it going to be Nelson playing with Oposo and Vanek? But this is a chance now where we'll be able to see, I guess, does now, the other flip side of it is, does Thomas Vanek now turn into Mr. Superstar and maybe even help his trade value by himself?
Yeah.
So, this is the other frustrating part of it. He is a very talented player. I think the track record speaks for itself. But that's the, not to make it's our own selfish reasons, because obviously if we're trading this guy, we want to get the best return. So for our own selfish reasons, it hurts us more in ways than one than just that we don't have John Tavares for the rest of the year. It's we don't have our best player, who by the way is one of our best passers, who by the way is one of our best presences on the ice, to lead this team and make those around him better, just like a superstar does. So now you wonder, do some of these guys step up, the Grabners, the Vaneks, and continue to keep this game tight and this team tight in games and stuff like that, and help where people look and go, wow, this team's lost Tavares, but they're fighting valiantly, and this guy's still putting up points, and this guy's doing this, and this guy's stepped up. Grabner all of a sudden scoring again. In a selfish way, it may actually end up, it could help the Islanders. But boy, oh boy, when you think of all the things Tavares has done with not only the scoring but the passing and the heads-up plays, it's like, wow. It's going to be tough to get guys to step up.
I think at this point, being a week and a half away from the trade deadline, I don't think it really helps or hurts this guy's trade value. What's he going to play, 3 games?
That's true.
I think that he is what he is. I think that his trade value is maybe a little bit more than it would have been had he not been playing with Tavares to begin with, but I think with only having to play 3 games or so before the deadline, seeing as he had the season that he has had, I mean, this guy could have come back if Tavares hadn't have been hurt. This guy could have come back, played those 3 games, had no points, and still had high trade value.
Yeah, no,
because
that's
ultimately, there's a team that's looking for scoring that wants to win a Stanley Cup, and they're going to give up a king's ransom for him because they want that Stanley Cup.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right, and that's what I think is going to end up happening. I think that the more patient you are, and it's good that the Islanders were this patient. I'm glad that they didn't pull the trigger on a poorer return, if you will, before the Olympic break. I think you're going to have a team, maybe it's Detroit, that is struggling to get those guys. Maybe it's Vancouver. How long are they going to be? What's Kessler's situation? I think there's going to be a team out there that's kind of on the bubble that is going to go through some injury problems that may be willing to pony up. I mean, the cool thing, I guess, for the NHL is that years like this where they have the Olympics and you have the better players going and playing for their countries and things like that, is it opens the door for a team like a Columbus to come in and steal a spot, or maybe a Winnipeg Jets type of team to come in and steal a spot. So in that respect, it maybe helps grow the game in areas like Columbus and stuff like that. But if it's at the mercy of the Detroit Red Wings losing their star player because of silly exhibition games, then it's not the coolest thing in the world, and I don't see how overall that helps grow the game.
No.
But it definitely opens up the opportunity for some of these other teams to look at now their opponents that are weaker and say, you know what, we've been rebuilding for so long. Thomas Vanek's on the block. We know we probably don't have a chance to re-sign him, but we got a good team here, and that'll help us go far this year. You know what? Give up the assets for this year. Let's go for a playoff spot, and And Columbus may very well end up doing. A team like Columbus may very well end up doing that.
Yeah.
They could be a dark horse candidate for a guy like this.
Yeah.
Especially since they're getting scoring out of guys like Dubinsky and Anisimov. So you're gonna have teams that are gonna be like that may be willing to give up more than your typical Chicago Blackhawks, Los Angeles Kings, Pittsburgh Penguins. So I can see it going both ways. I can see if I'm an NHL GM that's trying to trade for a guy, I would absolutely mention that. Say, I noticed we've come back, and your star player doesn't have any points. Is it? I'm worried. Is he a product of having to play with good players? Or can I put him on a line and have him do it himself? I mean, but that's just an NHL GM trying to do the best that they can to leverage themselves. But when you really think about it, like you said, Snow can just say it's 3 games. He's played 3 games. He's come back from the Olympics. It's 3 games. My whole team has had trouble scoring or something like that. So I mean, it's it does.
And it's very
right.
And you could just as easily say, look, you know what? I got 5 other teams calling me right now. You either want them or you don't.
Yeah. So.
It's not like he's trying to trade. He's not trying to move. Throw a dart at somebody. Peter Regan.
Yeah.
Who we ended up. Yes, we did trade him, or it's not like we're trying to trade Karkner, and it's like, you probably
I wish we could, but
but you're, in a ideal situation, you get one offer for the guy, and you're kind of at the mercy of the other general manager if you're trying to get rid of him. In a case like this where you're trading a Thomas Vanek, if it's not you, it's him, and if
Yeah.
it's not him, it's this guy, and if it's not him, it's this other team, and then these two other ones.
Yeah.
You really do have your pick of the litter when it comes to this thing.
Yeah.
For the Islanders to come back with one more contract offer, right? I want them to come back with one more contract offer before the deadline. We upped it. Are we getting any closer?
They should come.
Or are you really set on testing the market? If you are, then that's fine. We're gonna move you. You understand that we have to get something back for you because we gave up assets for you, but this is where we want you to be. So, like, if we're, let us know if we're getting closer here.
Yeah,
maybe we can lock this up and you can make your payday and you can be here and...
Or, okay, here's our latest offer, this and that and the other thing, with all the stuff you said, 3 other offers. So, prove that you want this guy. I would like to see one more offer, one more exchange in numbers before that happens.
It probably won't.
I don't think it will. I think Vanek's going to be traded. I mean, like you said, it comes back and the roster freeze is lifted. Although some moves have started to be made, you have guys that are going through waivers yesterday, Mike Koskas and the Mike Mottos of the world. In some situations, you're going to have guys that are going to get moved right away, or you're going to have guys that are hold on. I mean, you're going to really have like 10 days between the end of this freeze and the trade deadline. So we're entering the last weeks of Vanek's tenure, I think, at least for this season as a New York Islander. Now the only thing we have to worry about is the return on some of these guys. I stated last week, this team needs to do all it can to get something tangible. I'm tired of the picks, and it looks like, the thing that I have the most fear on is if you're trading Andrew McDonald for a second and a fourth, and there's a lot of teams that want him. Leverage them against each other. Use what you can to get that first-round pick. There are teams that, Washington is hot for this guy, and it sounds like Snow's turned down some really good offers on a guy like this. But sure, he's 27. He leads the league in block shots. He's 4th in the NHL in minutes. I mean, these are all stuff. Now we know how he plays when he does that. Obviously, he can't handle those minutes, but there are teams out there that look at this guy and go, he's blocking a lot of shots. We really could use a guy like that in our, as our 3 or 4, which he'll be fine as. These teams want somebody like that. They think they can get him signed. They think, I think a team will give up something really good for him. The problem is, they may give up that first-round pick, and then it's like, oh, great, we got a first-round pick, and I'm going to be sitting here going, you couldn't get something more tangible than another future draft pick? And the frustrating thing is, given the Islanders' track record, and given the way that Snow does things, I fear for the second-round picks, and here they come, and this is all absolutely great, And the thing was, the thing that's frustrating me is McKenzie and Drager were saying, Vanek, Snow's looking for 3 pieces. A first-round pick, a young roster player, and a prospect. Fine. I'd love that. My fear is he's going to look at it, he's going to get offers that don't include all 3 pieces, and is going to say, well, as long as I get my first-round pick back, I'm happy.
Yeah. And
my fear is that he's going to take a deal that's got maybe a prospect and a first-round pick, and it's going to be like you couldn't get a tangible player from a team or a guy who needed a change of scenery or something. It's no different. To me.
And I want to see them parlay those picks into player. Not, enough with, I've been saying this for so long, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but enough with the freaking draft
That's what
picks.
I'm saying. Listen.
Parlay, go get an Edler. Go get one of these guys.
If St. Louis decides that they want to add some scoring to their wing, and they have Chris Stewart on the block, you figure out a way to make that work. You figure out a way to make Chris Stewart work. And get him here into a different situation and see what these guys... Listen, the guy's going to be an RFA after the year. If you don't work, you move him. If he's okay, and you sign him to another extension and see how he goes, and see when and if he wears out his welcome here. Then, but
he's better than
outside the box.
He's better than the Pierre-Marc Bouchards and the Peter Regans of the world,
and he's still young. So that's what you got to do. You got to think outside the box a little bit.
But understand that when you get that type of player, he is a depth player. He is not a first-line player. He's not a second-line player. At best, he is a third-line player.
You know, certainly he's a step back from where he was those 2 years where he had the 60-point year with Colorado, and then the 60-point year with St. Louis and Colorado when he got traded. He's become more of that 40-point guy, and it's like, well, is he really a second liner? Is he a third liner? Is his style? Is it the line he's on? Is it this? Is it that? Is it the fact that St. Louis doesn't have enough scoring to overcome that?
I'd rather see him out there than Bailey.
That's what I'm saying. If you're going to trade Vanek, get a replacement winger, whatever, fine. And try Chris Stewart and all different... that's the kind of move that I would really look to make. And if, to me, I don't need a first-round pick if I'm going to get that and another solid prospect or something like that. To me, the pick is not as important.
No.
I'm tired of the draft picks. I want something tangible. This team needs to figure out a way to turn it around and get people excited about wanting to go to Brooklyn. Because right now, I got people that I know that love this team. You and I know people that love this team that go, let Brooklyn have this franchise. Brooklyn will love this franchise and this and that. They need to figure out a way, and they have 1 year to do this, to get people on Long Island excited, especially the people that have been with the team for a while, that are sitting there going, your middle-aged working-class people that are going, I have to get on a train from Ronkonkoma to go all the way out to Brooklyn and watch this team. And now, right now, they're saying, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
Give them a reason.
They
got to get something tangible to turn this around now.
By no stretch of the imagination are we saying that Chris Stewart is the guy that's going to draw people to Brooklyn.
I'm just using him as an example.
But
he's on the block and things like that.
He's a piece to the puzzle, and he's a better piece than what we have, and he's a hell of a lot better of a piece than anything that they're going to add in their, bargain basement free agency hunt.
Exactly. To me, it shows... a thought towards the future. It says, listen, we understand this is going on, we're losing this guy Vanek, but you know what? We're trying to figure out what else works here. We went out and got this player. We're going to play him for the rest of this year. I'm not looking for, I'm not just looking for them just to add a player so I can say, yes, they added something tangible. I'm not looking for them to add Dean McAvan in a trade. Like they did a few years ago, although Dean played pretty well for us.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for something tangible. I think that if you think outside the box and you're patient enough and you don't just go, oh, but this deal has a first-round pick in it, I think you can get something that'll make everybody happy, something that you can work with for the last 20 games of the year and see what you got and work from there. And it also, like you said, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like you mentioned, you'd rather see him than a guy like Bailey out there. It sends a message to these other players that says, oh, we went and got a tangible player for this. If he outperforms somebody, if we feel he's better on this third-line wing than you, Josh Bailey, he's got your spot.
Yeah. You got to push him. Because what incentive does Josh Bailey have? He just signed a nice, juicy extension.
Everybody
He's not playing, but he gets his ice time.
Everybody thinks, oh, they're selling. They're going to go out and trade for picks and prospects. You start adding bona fide players in that situation. If they go and turn around and trade, Andrew McDonald for one of Holtby or Newworth, whoever Washington decides they don't want. If Washington obviously has plans to sign Andrew McDonald long term, they won't have a problem giving up either of those guys. All of a sudden, Kevin Poulin goes, oh gosh.
I don't know why we didn't make that trade.
But
frankly,
you see what I'm saying? There's things like that you go.
But they want the stupid draft pick. That's
neither
why.
of them could stop a beach ball, and they probably wanted the draft pick.
But they want the draft pick.
But so that's my fear, is that this team is that Snow's gonna strictly look at draft picks and getting his first and second round picks back.
Yes, and because this team is not going to make the playoffs, because they can't make the playoffs, he's not going to bring players in.
My fear is it's just because it's the Vanek trade itself was outside the box thinking a little bit. The inability to add something to Nino Niederreiter to get what you needed. Now, Clutterbuck we needed.
Yeah.
But it frustrates me that you could have added more. You could have added a pick. You could have added, a prospect to maybe get Jonathan Bernier, to maybe get Corey Schneider. The insistence on trading Nino and Nino alone got the Islanders Cal Clutterbuck in a third. To me, when I'm looking at this and I'm looking at my assets and I'm looking at my weaknesses, I would say, if I add assets to Niederreiter, can I get this player? And I call the team up, yeah, well, I'm open to it. This is what I'm looking for. Okay. And I go back to the drawing board and I do this and that. I don't just say, no, he's the only player I'm trading in a deal. I'm not looking to add anything else to him. I value my picks. I'm not looking to do that. That's what frustrates me. That shows me that there was an inability to think outside the box.
Correct.
And to me, that's my biggest fear, is that I need to get my first-round pick back. I need to get my first-round pick back. And the scary thing is we're hearing a lot from Art Staple, from Bob McKenzie, that the Islanders really want their first-round pick back. So they say
in a bad draft.
Yes. So although they're saying that the Islanders want three pieces, it's already, to me, you read between the lines, been said, the Islanders only care about getting their first-round pick back. And my fear is that they're going to jump at the first offer that has a first-round pick that they deem will be the highest one, whatever it is, 15th, 16th, 17th, and we'll just move him and say, well, we got a first-round pick back, and mid-round, this and that. You're always looking for guys, and then we'll wait 3 years for that guy to come through the ranks.
We need guys now.
And we need guys now. I don't care about the fact. I'll take a player in a second at this point if it's somebody that's young that you can use.
You need somebody on the roster right now.
So you need to show hope.
Not just for this season, because this season's in the toilet, but it's next season and moving forward.
Tryout. Exactly, it's a tryout. Because like you said, otherwise then you're going to be signing the Pierre-Marc Bouchards of the world. I will say though, always my example was, now you keep moving up in the world, you're going to go sign the injury-prone Ales Hemsky. I did like the way he played in the Olympics. I would not mind adding his skill to this roster. I would mind adding it as a first line. Hey, this is our new first line winger.
That's what it's going to be.
But I'm more open to having him on this roster, I should say.
With guys like the Edlers of the world that seem to need a change of scenery. The team that he's on has a desire to move him. We have assets. No, it's not going to help us this season, but nothing's going to help us this season.
Right.
Start thinking about next season and the season after that and the season after that. You came out and said the rebuild is over.
Right.
You cannot go out and get more draft picks because you said the rebuild is done.
Just because you're adding players doesn't mean you're not rebuilding. You can rebuild and get players. You can go call up Toronto and say, we want Jake Gardiner and we want James Reimer. What do you need? You need a winger? You need a center? Come up with something creative. Franz Nielsen, this and that and the other thing, but you got to give us a second, this guy and that guy. Okay, well, what can we just get for Reimer? We need a goalie and stuff like that. There's things you can do. And these players are all young. These players are all under team control. The Islanders love players under team control. They're easy to sign. They can sign them to their backloaded deals. They can sign them to deals that take them up to their UFA year, this and that. They love it. Just because you're trading for players. A player on an NHL roster does not mean you're rebuilding. You're rebuilding for next year, but you're showing me, oh, wow, they went out and got a goalie. Oh, wow, they went and got a 23-year-old defenseman who's, okay, we'll change the scenery. Let's see how he does. 20 games. Is he good? Yeah, bring him back. Sometimes, and
they're not the Brian Rolstons of the world.
Right, correct. You're looking for,
when you're thinking about established players.
You're looking for teams that have these younger players in these roles and say, we don't really need Chris Stewart anymore. We have Vladimir Tarasenko that's doing this stuff for us, and by the way, doing a better job of it. So to me, when I see that, it frustrates me, and that's what frustrates me is I'm fearing that this is just going to be a get our picks back, happy we got our picks back,
and we'll walk away.
Shove it down our throats about how great it is that we got our picks back, and meanwhile we'll feel like, so-and-so had this team on the block and stuff like, this player on them. We all got excited last year over the fact that Snow was trying to get Brandon Saad. Be it if it was truth or if it was just a decoy that was thrown out there by Staple, I have no idea. But when you look at what was going on in the rest of the summer, when the summer came, I guarantee you they were only offering Niederreiter for him.
Probably.
Or Niederreiter in a third, or something like that, and meanwhile playing with Taves and Kane.
And I love Cluck, and I'm really happy to have Clutterbuck on this team. So I'm going to say this out of the chute.
Not Nino.
But if you called Los Angeles that needs scoring, and they were willing to give you Bernier for Niederreiter and a draft pick, because Bernier didn't get a huge return.
No, we got Fratton, who struggled. Ben Scrivens, who they were able to turn into a third-round pick, and Scrivens played well for them, and a second-round pick.
But not a huge return.
No.
If you could have given them Niederreiter in a second, or Niederreiter a second and a fourth, or Niederreiter a second and, throw a dart at one of our other prospects.
You got 58 defensemen in the system.
Yeah. And you could have brought in that young goaltender that helped you, but you were so bent on, I can't give up my picks.
That's what frustrates me. You knew that this guy didn't have any value. 4 teams had told you by this point that this guy didn't have any value. To me, if I have a guy, I swallow my pride a little bit and say, you know what? I need this guy. You have a guy I need. I have some pieces that you need. Niederreiter could be great for you guys, can develop into a good, solid scoring thing. We'll throw it, I'll throw in, you need a defenseman, I'll throw this guy in. We drafted him in the 3rd round a couple of years ago, but he's done well for us and this and that and the other thing. Yeah, it hurts to get rid of those guys, but, you're still keeping your Pullocks, your Reinhardts, you can develop those guys, and you can move forward with adding something that you needed immediately to this roster. That's good asset management. right now you look at it and you go, there's not good asset management that's going on, and that's my fear, is that settle for the picks, getting the picks back, that would be the only thing that they care about, and we're going to see more deals like that. And I'm really adamant that I will be upset with this trade deadline if these guys are going for strict picks or prospects that are still 2 or 3 years away. If you're going out and you're getting, the Jacob Troubers of the world, guys that kind of need a change of scenery but had played in the NHL, and even if they're back in juniors, it's go, okay, well, this is a guy we'll use next year. Great. That's fine. Get me a guy that you can try out. Get me a guy that can be in the lineup next year. Absolutely, I love it. But you're going to get me a guy that, well, they drafted him in the first round in 2010.
No more titles, no more.
Yeah. Or, well, they did him late in the first round in 2013, and he's been a project, and he had a problem, and he's still got college, and he's got 3 more years left. And it's like, why? That's not something we can use now, unless you're parlaying him into something else, which, as you mentioned, hasn't happened. So, I think that you got to think outside the box. You got to be creative. If that means really, selling your players in a different thing and throwing an extra asset in there to get what you need, fine. If it means trading a guy like a Franz Nielsen and to start moving forward and changing your look at center, fine. I think that those are moves, or trading a Grebner. I think those are moves that can get you something good and help other areas. And I think that they're replaceable parts, certainly, that you can either in another trade or get through free agency, as stopgaps and this and that and the other thing. So to me, that's the name of the game. Is, like I said, this team's got to figure out a way to get people excited and get some players for the, try them out the rest of this year and get guys in here next year, change the look a little bit. Getting the picks and prospects strictly likely aren't going to help us for this year or next year.
No. All right, that's going to. We will be back next week in a full swing. For Chris Hessel, I'm Sean Croft. We're all Islanders. See you guys next Sunday.